Hello, my name is Barbara Kraatz-Fortini, and I'm an assistant professor of genetics and a program director at the Keck Graduate Institute, School of Pharmacy and Health Sciences in Claremont, California. Welcome to my classroom, also known as my home office. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to give this talk on genomics education. And this was long before all of higher education profoundly changed due to the coronavirus. I think it's important to keep a few of my slides that I had prepared, but also talk about how this will impact what we're doing now and in the future. So the title of my talk is Priming the Precision Medicine Pipeline, New Models for Applied Genomics Education. And I'd like to address what it's going to take to make precision medicine standard of care from the perspective of providing enough trained clinicians to be in every clinic, hospital, in every community across the United States and eventually around the world. So a brief outline of my talk. I'll start with the current applied genomics pipeline, then the skills and knowledge domains we've identified as important in applied genomics. Next, I'll talk about a new program we've started at KGI, which is a Master of Science in Human Genetics and Genomic Data Analytics. And I'll finish up with some additional educational models for genomics training that are coming in the future. Of course, I am an educator, so we have learning objectives. The 3 learning objectives for this talk are to identify the primary skills and knowledge domains in applied genomics training programs, to recognize challenges in applied genomics education in the current environment, and to appreciate opportunities to expand the genomics expertise pipeline into populations that you might not be thinking of. So let's start by talking about who is currently working in precision medicine. I think if you're tuning into this conference, you believe that genetics and genomics are going to change everything about healthcare in the future, and I would agree with you. But one of the issues that is holding the industry back is the lack of trained experts. According to the statistics on the American Board of Medical Specialties, of the more than 900,000 board-certified physicians, less than 3,000 are certified in medical genetics and genomics. According to a survey that was published last year in Genetics and Medicine, from 2015 data, more than 30% of geneticists said that new patients had to wait more than 3 months for a non-emergency appointment. And of course, that was 5 years ago. I can only imagine what it is today. Outside of physicians, of course, the need for genetic counselors is growing. 27% is the estimate in the next decade. And then, of course, there are emerging careers that we have no data for, but just looking at job postings, things like variant interpretation specialist, genomic scientist, etc., continue to grow. So where are these genomics specialists coming from? Well, first I'll talk about the PhD track. I am a PhD. I have a PhD in biology from Caltech, and I was trained to do basic research. And that pipeline, I would say, has served the United States extremely well. The advances in basic and applied genomics has enabled all of this actionability. And I will say, even though there are some threats to this system due to the coronavirus and some of the economic consequences, we're very good at making PhDs that can make these fundamental discoveries. And so a lot of PhDs are going to go into basic and applied research that will continue to push forward the boundaries of what we can do. Thinking of getting into the clinic, however, a lot of PhDs do not go that route. Who does go into the clinic? Well, of course, we have medical doctors, but again, that's a small percentage of the total MD graduates in the United States end up working in genetics. An increasing number of nurse practitioners are specializing in genetics. And of course, we have genetic counselors. I came into this world through genetic counseling. KGI decided to start a genetic counseling program to address the profound shortage in genetic counselors, especially on the West Coast of the United States. And I was recruited to help teach genetics and genomics in this program. And it really got me interested in this field of genetic counseling, which I admit I knew very little about at the time. And one of the things that makes it an exciting career choice is that you don't have to go into clinical practice. There are roles for genetic counselors in the genomics industry, at testing companies, in development of new tests, and in drug development. But that means that a large percentage of people every year who graduate with a genetic counseling degree don't end up working in clinical practice for their entire careers, which means the pipeline is further narrowed. We also have people who contribute to this industry with other graduate degrees like bioinformatics, also have biostatistics. But again, these experts are not going into clinical practice. So how do we change the balance of these arrows, not by reducing who is going into the genomics industry or the drug development path, but by expanding the total number of people going into applied genomics? Well, I'll start by talking a little bit about the institution I'm a part of, and that's KGI. I assume that a lot of you have never heard of us. We're very small and we're relatively young in the higher education space. Founded just in 1997, KGI was, however, founded specifically for the applied life sciences. So we're a graduate level institution, and all of our programs are either health science or life science. But we do try to be very responsive to industry and to healthcare settings. We're the youngest of the 7 Claremont colleges in Claremont, California, and you see a lovely picture here of our campus and the mountains that are nearby. We're divided into 2 schools. The Henry E. Riggs School of Applied Life Sciences houses the original programs, and that's our PhD in Applied Life Science, the Master of Business and Science, Masters of Engineering and Bioprocessing, and then other Master of Science programs and our certificate programs. We also have a School of Pharmacy and Health Sciences that was built in the last few years for an innovative PharmD curriculum. And once the PharmD program was up and running, the leadership decided to look into genetic counseling. And that's when I came to KGI to help with the establishment of our genetics programs to teach human genetics and human genomics. And in the process of starting the genetic counseling program, the leadership had this crazy idea to also start a companion program in genomic data analytics to really be out there meeting the need of the jobs of the future. And I'll talk about how we structure that. And last, we have an occupational therapy program coming soon. Some of you may know that we are also in the process of starting a School of Medicine, and it'll be very exciting to see how that develops in the next couple years. One thing that's really important to know about KGI is that innovation is our motto. So innovators start here is the tagline on all of our banners and campus materials. And it really is an understanding at KGI that we really want to be near the cutting edge and to create new models in education. So how do we do this in the space of genomics? Well, we wanted to take a full spectrum approach. There is the traditional way. At KGI, of course, we have these 2 master's programs, and so we can admit small cohorts of students and get them graduate degrees. But that's not the only way we can expand the pipeline. So starting on the left side of the screen, we have initiatives to help increase interest in high school. Now, I made this arrow a little bit smaller because we don't have to do much work in that field right now. I think just the way society has embraced genetic testing and the power of genomics, a lot of young people already want to go into precision medicine. And so the only thing we need to do is expose them to all of the careers that are involved in that. If they don't want to go to medical school, how can they play a role in this exciting part of health science? And of course, summer immersion programs to get students the expertise they'll need to get into undergraduate programs, which will then build on their talents. In the undergraduate sphere, we do have a summer immersion program at KGI. Of course, this summer it will not be in person. But again, we also want to expose undergrads to careers in genomics that maybe aren't as traditional as being a doctor or a nurse. Very few undergraduates have ever heard of genetic counseling or even the genomics industry. And so giving them the opportunity to just see the options is one part of providing students for the pipeline. Now, of course, KGI is a graduate institution, so we do award master's degrees. And we have two of these programs, the Genetic Counseling Program and the Genomic Data Analytics Program, that provide clinicians and support services to the genomics industry. But we also know a lot of people are going to get into this pipeline through a traditional medical school experience. And it's important that we now integrate genetics and genomics into medical school education so it comes as second nature when a doctor is handed a genetics report. The biggest audience, however, though, are the people that are already there. And these are people who are working clinicians, either genetic counselors, nurses, doctors, that want more genetics and genomics expertise, including people who work in industry and want to better serve the precision medicine workforce. And so we will address this with executive education programs and continuing education workshops, just building that expertise at all levels. And so that is the full spectrum approach. So what kind of skills do we want in an ideal applied genomics expert? Well, when we set out to design our programs, I did a lot of interviews with people working in the industry side and clinical sites in genomics testing companies, just to get a handle on what their perfect new employee would be. And we kept coming back to these three core domains. The first is just genetics knowledge. That is why genetic counselors can get jobs all throughout the industries, because people are very interested in experts that know genetics through and through. Understanding genomics now with all of the fundamental insights we've learned in the last few years, and an appreciation for human variation that is up to date on what we know on structural variation, on common variation, on rare variants, and again on the impact of ancestry and our current limitations and data from multi-ethnic cohorts. The next big skill set was in data science. So these are hands-on skills, the ability to have some knowledge of command line programming, to be able to do data analytics, and to also work in this space, managing files in a HIPAA compliant way. Of course, in genomics, we have very large files sometimes that we want to stay with the patient. So really understanding how you manage this information on a practical level. And the last domain is something that comes up at KGI in all of our programs, and that's just what it takes to be an effective coworker in the current state of the economy. And that is someone who has great communication skills, who understands how to work in a team, has strong ethics, and all of the skills that go along with being a professional. So at KGI, we decided to address these three core areas with a new program, Master of Human Genetics and Genomic Data Analytics. And I always point out to our students that the first part is the Master of Human Genetics. It is a Master of Science, and we really want the students to fundamentally understand human genetics. We also want them to understand the applied life sciences and really benefit from KGI's long track record in that space, and to have this innovative human genomics curriculum that is on the leading edge, trying to figure out what is going to be important in 5 to 10 years when they're still in practice that we're only learning about today. A highlight of this program is the ability to work side by side with our future genetic counselors and our applied life science students, while they're gaining all of this hands-on experience, but they're also building up their professional network and really understanding the roles and needs of people they will interact with, but are in different professions. And last, we want to make sure our graduates have this foundation in genetics and genomics, but have an ability to translate that to an actionable clinical recommendation and really be the person that's between the research scientist and the clinical practitioner. So how did we structure this program? Well, it is a 21-month, 2-year program. We have our core genetics courses that they take alongside the genetic counseling students. Then we have the applied life science courses that are based on previous KGI offerings. And we have a summer internship where the students get hands-on practice doing all of these skills. And then in the second year, we have specialty courses in genomic data analytics, and the students have the opportunity to pick a concentration. Our 3 concentrations are clinical decision support, clinical trial design, and assay development. And last, the students do a capstone project in collaboration with an outside either medical center or research institute or industry site to develop a showcase of their skills. These are the courses that we put together for our 2-year program. Everyone in our program takes these courses. In the first year, we're very heavy in just the basics of genetics and analytical skills. So in the first semester, the students will be taking a full course in human molecular genetics and genetic disease mechanisms, but they'll also be taking programming for the biosciences, which is a class taught in Python. We also do teach just the basics of working in the command line and connecting to remote servers, other skills that will help them use programs built by others. In the second semester, they get an entire semester of human genomics that's coupled with a human genomics lab. We do have a MinION sequencer, so we do long-read sequencing. We use publicly available data to do a trio analysis with short-read sequencing. They get expertise going from FASTQ files all the way to variant call files, and then interpreting variants using the ACMG guidelines. They also have courses in clinical cancer genomics, medical genetics, and biochemical genetics, and that really is the foundation of all of their knowledge they will take forward. At the same time, they're doing those courses in the first year. They're also doing their applied life science curriculum. So they do take a course in medical diagnostics to really understand where this data comes from. They take the introduction to bioscience industry to understand how this industry works and what their role will be. They do take clinical biostats and healthcare ethics. And they also get the opportunity to take a biomedical data systems and informatics class, which also includes transcriptomics. And this is a course taught in the programming language R. And they take a clinical trial design and literature evaluation course to start learning how to read clinical literature as opposed to just basic science literature. So in the first year curriculum, we really give them a strong foundation, and they take that into their summer internship. And then they come back the second year, and a lot of their time is spent on their capstone project, 6 units each semester. But they also have the second year curriculum that we've designed specifically for roles that we think are very important in the future. And the first is a full semester in DNA sequencing and variant analysis, really teaching the students how to use the clinical guidelines to understand variants that they find in patients. We also have a course in functional genomics where they learn a lot of the research side techniques, including chromatin conformation capture and other things that I think are fun, but the students might interact with later if these become useful to the clinical space. We also have a course that is called Genomic Knowledge Translation, and this is really a communications class. Because we have spent 2 years filling their heads with lots of very technical knowledge, they then need to know how to give this information back to a variety of audiences in a way that is digestible. So we do have a course that does talk about presenting their information in a variety of formats. And last, we have a genomic data visualization and management course, and this also reinforces their skills in file management and programming. So this course uses both R and Python and really sets them up for working in a HIPAA compliant way. Now we have another course in pharmacogenomics and advanced pharmaceutical discovery that we do in the second year. And this really leverages the fact that the students are in the School of Pharmacy, and a lot of them are interested in how genomics is changing drug development. And this course really highlights the changes in our field there. Now, I did mention each student does get the opportunity to pick a concentration. We have 3 to choose from. The first concentration was clinical decision support. This is really how we built the program, thinking about the ideal education to be a variant curator. And for those students who really want to go that route, we picked from our other existing courses at KGI to offer molecular basis of disease, medical terminology, advanced writing. We do have some fundamental papers classes in applied medicine, but I'll highlight 2 courses in this track. And the first is our human embryology and prenatal diagnosis. This course is required for our genetic counseling students, but is not required for the genomic data analytics students. But a lot of our GDA students felt that it was very useful for understanding genetics and how this plays out in human beings, and so that is a very popular elective. The other course I wanted to point out was our machine learning in the life sciences course. And this is for our students who have the programming skills and interests to really learn how machine learning can help automate in the future a lot of the things we do by hand today. And I think it will be an incredible skill set to bring to any position where we're increasingly seeing AI help speed along workflows and do first pass interpretation. When we were building the MSGDA degree, we did get a lot of input from one of our partners at Amgen, and they were telling us how important genetics now is in the clinical trial development aspect of the pharmaceutical industry, and the need for trained genetics professionals in that space. And so for people interested in going into drug development and pharmacogenomics, we put together these courses from our existing offerings. First, of course, is the Introduction to Food and Drug Law. I think the FDA policies for genetic testing and test development have never been in the news more. So I anticipate this course is going to be very popular in the fall. But these issues are important to know if you plan on developing the next great pharmaceutical or even a genetic test. Then KGI does have our courses in pharmaceutical discovery and development and design of clinical trials. The last concentration that we came up with was assay development. These are for our true entrepreneurs, and there's a very entrepreneurial spirit at KGI. And so for those students who have taken all this information and have a great idea for a new product, we wanted them to know what it would take to bring it to market. And so this puts together some of our business and science courses, including the food and drug law, and our advanced in vitro diagnostics business operations. And again, some of the fundamental papers just to understand what is actually needed in the field. So these are our 3 concentrations. I will say most of our students so far have chosen the clinical decision support pathway. And for those working in precision medicine, I think this is the pathway that best captures the skills, knowledge, and expertise that will be needed to be an effective precision medicine specialist. Now, the heart of our program is actually what happens when the students are off campus, and that's the summer experience, because I think nothing helps the students really understand what all of this didactic coursework means than seeing it put into practice. So all of our students complete a summer internship at either a clinical genomics lab, a company, a research center. Below you see the place where our first cohort spent their summer. So we had students at LabCorp, BioMarin, St. Jude, Scripps Translational, Merck, and the NIH. And this experience really gave all of our students an insight into what skills were really used day to day and why they needed to know all those things that I told them that they needed to know. And we hope that the summer experience translates into their capstone project. As I said, in the second year, the students spend 18 hours a week working on a project. And if everything goes to plan, they will just extend their summer internship project. However, we do have some places where this is not possible, or they get really interested in something else. So it's not a requirement, but we also have these capstone projects that allow our students to work at sites like these to do a more long-term and in-depth project. So I ask all of you listening, if you have a project that you've always wanted to work on and just don't have enough time for it, think whether one of our students might be able to help you in either the summer or in the school year to really make it into an interesting and useful product and project and base of knowledge for the rest of the field by having a project for one of our students. So far I've talked to you about this program as if it is still taking place at KGI. We had our first cohort came on campus in the fall of 2018, and they were scheduled to graduate next month. Unfortunately, they are not going to be able to have their commencement in May as it was planned because we have gone completely online. All of these programs were designed in person with the summer internship experience. But, you know, we always talked about, well, what if the second year was online, then they could work anywhere in the United States. They wouldn't have to work in Southern California. They could maybe telecommute to sites all over the country. And there was a general feel that sometime in the future, we would put portions of this online. Of course, 1 week before spring break, we were told that we would not be coming back to campus due to the coronavirus. And so we had 9 days to convert our entire curriculum to online education. And I will say that I have been extremely thankful for the grace of our students, that they have made it work and our faculty have made it work. And so right now we are fully online, but I'll put an asterisk because this is fully online with a temporary feel to it. We're using Zoom. We're doing the best we can, but it's still based on what we would have done in a classroom, and we are just sort of doing it remotely. In the future, of course, we can do this a lot better. And there are hybrid and fully online programs that really leverage all of the capacity of the internet and remote computing to do really cool things with the students not sitting in the same room. And so I think just in the future, I don't know that we're ever going back to an institution where the majority of our classes meet in physical spaces. Now, this is both exciting and scary, but I think all across the world, we're trying to figure out how we want to do education if there can be times when we're told with very little notice you can no longer come to this physical location. And this brings up the question of timing. So right now, all of our classes are synchronous. So we meet for a specific time. I teach human genomics right now from 10:30 to noon on Mondays and Wednesdays. And all of the students have to come together at that time to participate in the class. Of course, there is a model that is more asynchronous. At KGI, we do sometimes use the flipped classroom. So for my human molecular genetics course, all of the lectures are pre-recorded. And so students can watch those lectures whenever they would like, and we only meet to do hands-on learning activities. Now, in an asynchronous model, the students would be working as a group, but they would not necessarily come together at the same time. They would collaborate, but not in person together. There are some advantages to the asynchronous style. Of course, if you are a working clinician or if you have a family, it may be very beneficial to schedule your education around other things that you cannot change. However, the synchronous model does have the ability for people to come together and really do that group work and have a chance to discuss with faculty members and have those spontaneous conversations that really lead to increased discovery and also enthusiasm for their education. Of course, The programs I've talked about are full-time programs. They're very heavy, intense 2-year programs, but we do need to think about what we're doing for certificate-based programs or just continuing education, things that can be delivered in small chunks. And of course, we do want to do this with very forward-thinking pedagogy, which is team-based learning, problem-based learning, everything very active. And this means not just listening to me lecture. I know I love to lecture because it is my easiest way to take all of the things in my head and say them at the students. But I know for a fact that they don't learn that way. And so the ability to do things that actually challenge assumptions, make people circle back, make them use these skills until they become second nature, that is how we're going to have to do education. And that includes people who have not perhaps learned in this way before. I know through some of my conversations with colleagues that if you went to medical school, say 20 years ago, you're not used to team-based, active learning, flipped classroom style education. So it may be very hard to transition learning styles. But I think if we do it the right way, it can be something that's very valuable to people at all spectrum of their career. And the last is to get people into the setting where they're actually going to work, either through internships during gaps in the curriculum or through co-ops, where they're working in the field, getting hands-on expertise, while also getting didactic or classroom learning to build upon what they're seeing at their site. We are very interested in developing more of these partnerships. So if you or someone you know might have a site that really wants the energy of having students and the ability to have someone go on a deep dive on a project, we would love to talk to you. And so to address some of these issues, KGI was very fortunate to get a gift from Amgen last year to build out a new center. And this center is called the Center for Training and Applied Genomics, the CTAG. And it's really going to allow KGI to take this full spectrum approach, where we have young people who are interested in going into genomics, whether they're undergraduates or high school students even, and giving them master's programs or even PhD programs and other programs to get them into the field, as well as executive education and continuing education for people who are already in the field and just want to catch up. I feel like if I blink, I miss a year's worth of genomics discoveries. And so having programming that will keep people up to date when they're very busy in their clinic already, I think will be something we can add to this field. And so our current offerings right now are the Master of Science in Genetic Counseling. And I didn't talk about that program and what makes that program very unique today, but you can get more information on our website. The Masters of Science in Genomic Data Analytics. And we're launching this year our first summer program in clinical genetics and bioinformatics. We had planned a nice on-campus 2-week fully in-depth hands-on program, but unfortunately this will be a remote online offering this summer, but it does give us the opportunity to open it up to so many more students this way. So we will still be running our first summer program in clinical genetics and bioinformatics. And of course, we have lots of other ideas that are percolating through, and please stay tuned for any other exciting programs we announce. So in summary, genomics is changing, and it's changing extremely fast. So how do we change education to keep up with it? And if we're going to change healthcare, we're going to have to change education first. We also need to look at what are the barriers to making precision medicine the standard of care, and that is we need an expanded workforce with training in genetics, genomics, data analysis, and scientific communication. And to fully realize this potential, we have to take the full spectrum approach. We have to build the people interested, and we have to take people working in the clinic and also give them those skills that they need right now. So thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate any questions through the chat provided by